Our host, the world-renowned Christine Enville, an IFBB professional, 3 times world champion, a mentor, an icon, and of course, a founding co-owner of the best supplements money can buy, International Protein. In this episode, we've invited guest speaker Joey Cantlin, who's renowned for prepping athletes for comps. He's been a judge on the international stage, and he's a wealth of knowledge. So Joey, you're renowned for prepping athletes for comp. Tell us how you got started in your career.
Okay, so I think I've been in the industry for now nearly 28, so about 8 years. I was actually this story, it's not funny, but it's kind of funny. I mean, I'd been a PT for probably a year, and then I just had someone pick up my card at the gym that wanted to do a show, and she said, "Do you specialize in prepping people for shows?" And I said, "Well, yes." I haven't."
Did you just say yes? Did you fake it until you make it?
No, I was honest about it. But when I got into the industry, like, nutrition really fascinated me. Like, it was something that I was always really keen on learning a lot of. So I'd spent a good year up late at nights watching videos, reading lectures and stuff like that, reading transcripts. I said, look, I've never actually prepped someone, but I've been sort of preparing myself to do this for a long time now. So I'm happy to do it if you trust me to do it. And yeah, sure enough, she did. And then there was another girl that started with me probably halfway through her prep, and they both ended up doing actually really well. They both looked fantastic. And then luckily enough, one of those girls was quite popular on Instagram, and it was pretty hard to be well known on Instagram then. It wasn't much of a thing. So I was lucky enough to get a lot of exposure from that, and here we are.
And that's brilliant. And you actually kind of specialize in helping female athletes too. Is that right?
Yeah. Like the last sort of couple of years, it's been more men, but still a lot of females. But earlier in my, I guess, coaching career, it was majority females, just because that's where it started. Being very female specialized, it was hard to break into that male section and get men to trust you as well, because men are a little bit different. They're a little bit more, I guess, self-sufficient in this sort of industry. So, yeah.
Right. And when you're, I guess, prepping females, it's far more critical, like with the body fat.
It can be,
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So when I look at a female athlete, it's important to just view them as an athlete, just an athlete, not a female athlete, not a male athlete, and start working with them based on that. And then you just keep track of sort of, I guess, the trends. And then sometimes a female might show more female dominant sort of trends. Some don't. So it's important to just treat every athlete like an athlete in the beginning, and then it can get a little bit different from there. Yeah.
So how would you start out? Like with a person comes to you and says, okay, I want to get ready for this show. What are the first things that you do, or what do they need to bring to you, and what do you bring to them?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I always do is obviously conduct a consultation, and you try and get a good idea of how long that person has been training for, how long that person has been tracking for, where their knowledge base is at, because some people, they can sort of jump straight into a plan without having to actually have the education, because they already have it. Some people actually need to be educated. So obviously we get all their statistics and whatnot and set them up on a plan from there and just adjust from there. But people who don't have as much experience, then it's a little bit more of an education first kind of thing, and teaching them, the importance of nutrition, training around all that kind of stuff. So
we've done a lot of talking here about plans and programs. So do you find some people that want to compete have like no routine, or they really don't understand that? Is that what you bring to them, like the plan? Or
so some people already have that routine set in place, and they've already been practicing, I guess, along the lines of what they already need. But some people just come to me and say, I want to do a comp, but they haven't actually committed to going to the gym 3 to 5 days a week once in their life. They haven't ever tracked their food. So for those people, I say, okay, we can do this, but for you, like, you're not going to be starting a contest prep for 6 to 12 months, because I need to see that you can commit yourself without the deadline of a show.
And how do you do that? Like, how do you do that? Basically?
You just have to tell them that that's basically what it takes. And sometimes people are willing to get stuck into it. Sometimes people aren't, but you can find out pretty quick who's going to be able to do it and who can't.
Yeah. So when it comes down to the diet side of it, someone who's not really had a set diet, how do you get them onto that? Like, is it a cold turkey, here you go, off they go, or is it you find it you have to kind of work with them and they keep falling off and getting back on? And
yeah, well, I mean, everyone's different, and some people take a little bit longer than others. In the beginning, someone who may not be have as much experience, or just doesn't have that level of discipline, you try and work around, I guess, what they already do and mesh it between what you want them to do and slowly transition them into exactly what you want them to do. Because I find with some people are all in or all out, but some people are just often all out. So you have to slowly, get them into it.
Yeah, so I was pointing at you then, Ash.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah.
You're saying that I'm a half-ass.
No, yeah, all out. All out. Yeah, because that's something that we do talk about a lot here is that, having a program. And I know I haven't prepped a lot of people, but when I look back over the years, I did prep a lot of people. And that's where I would always start, like, how do you take someone who eats 3 times a day to try to get them up to 5 or 6 and without messing with their own routine too much, but giving them what they need to do.
Yeah.
And then obviously the things which were non-negotiable and are pretty much just like, no, you have to do this.
Yeah.
So you work like on the training and on the nutrition and the mindset side of things, or do you just like, what's your main focus?
Oh, a bit of everything. Yeah, a bit of everything. So some people, I only work with them for their nutrition because they're competent enough in their training. Some people are the opposite. Some people do their own nutrition and I do their training.
I know for myself, I have a very definite idea as to where I think people's macros need to be for competition. And it's not a lot of flexibility, like regardless of what a person, do you have that same approach, or do you, like, each person, you might have a radically different macro, based on what you think they need? How do you approach the nutrition side of it?
Well, everyone has different requirements and everyone's genetics are different as well, which is why I always tell people when they first come to me, the last thing I want to do is throw you straight into a diet, because I need at least 2 months to see how that person responds to said protocol. So some people might have a very adaptive metabolism. So that would mean that when you're going on the way down, their metabolic rate adapts very quickly. So you have to adjust their calories a little bit more frequently. If I don't know that going into a diet, then I'm going to be scratching my head quite frequently and we might not make it. Okay. So you've got to take into account, obviously, physical differences and sex differences and that kind of stuff, but also genetic variability, which you can pretty much find out through that initial phase.
Yeah. But do you have like, certain foods that you kind of like, the chicken and the rice, the oatmeal and that kind of stuff? Like, are there certain things that, regardless of who the person is, that's going in the diet, or how do you approach that? Is it a little bit more flexible than that?
In terms of food choice, I try to be fairly flexible, because I find if the athlete is allowed to have some flexibility and sort of pick things that they like, they're probably going to be more adherent. Like if I set out a meal plan for someone, I usually just give someone their macronutrients and give them a list of foods that I'd recommend. But if I tell them that they can only eat these sorts of foods, they might come to me 2 weeks later and be like, oh, by the way, I don't like that food, so I just didn't eat it. And I'm like, well, the whole plan is stuffed now because you just spent 2 weeks on X amount of calories when I thought you were doing this. So yeah, I try and give them a little bit of flexibility so it's a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So you're not a hard ass on them. You're a friendly.
Everyone requires different approaches. Like some people I've got to be really hard on because that's just how they respond. Some people you can baby them a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I never worked out as a coach, because I'm like,
I don't think you could tolerate people being.
No, as you know, I don't understand if I've told you how to do something.
Yeah, why can't you do it?
Exactly. Yep. Like, because I operate at that level. So that would suit certain people. And obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And obviously spend a lot of time.
So you're a patient man. That's what we're saying.
My patience has worn thinner over the years. Yeah.
And that's why
I'm a lot more stern with people now.
I guess that's why you're dealing with the better athletes as time goes on. Yeah.
But what I was going to ask was, like, even close to a show, like say 2 weeks out, where it does get really, really critical, how do you then adapt that, where a person's had that flexibility to swinging them back to like to deplete and to carb up, you actually need to follow exactly this. Do you not use that approach? Like how do you peaking and all that?
I start getting or tightening the reins as we get closer. So I do it progressively, so it kind of happens under their nose, and they don't realize it. So, for example, like your margin for error at 20 weeks out is going to be a lot smaller at 2 weeks out, and that margin of error just shrinks. And you pretty much include that in the plan. And then before they know it, they're being a lot more, I guess, precise with their food selections and their, their boundaries with their flexible dieting targets.
Yeah. So we had a little note about obviously intermittent fasting for active adults. And that's something that I see that crop up more and more. Is that something that you're using with active adults or competitors? Or can you just talk a little bit more about, I guess, what you mean by intermittent fasting? Because I know there's so many different methods of doing that. And I'm just wondering, have you used it in comp prep? Or when you say active adults, you're talking more just about people who are wanting to be fit and healthy, not specifically going for competition?
Yeah. I think intermittent fasting, it's something that everyone can use to some degree. I don't think it's an optimal approach, but for some people, it's the only approach that they can do. So, for example, like shift workers, they might have periods of time where they can't eat for 6 to 7 hours. Like I've worked with paramedics, for example, and if they've got a day where they've brought a patient in and then they immediately get a call out after, and that happens 3 or 4 times in a row, all of a sudden they haven't eaten for their whole shift. So for them, it might be have a meal at the start of the day and just fast for like 10 hours a day for that next 10 hours. And then finish all of their food after that. So it really depends on the person's lifestyle. If you don't require intermittent fasting, I don't tell people to do it.
Cool. That's a podcast that we do want to do at some point in time, because it's something where I think, like I say, if you have to do it, it'd be very hard to stick to if you don't have to.
Yeah,
do
because you'd be sitting there twiddling your thumbs, going, "Okay, well, when is it time to eat?"
Yeah, because I think we don't realize how much of our day is associated around or centered around that. And even if it's like, to go and get something or to plan something or to prep something. Yeah. And I know when you're competing, you need that sort of something to divert your mind, which I think I want to delve into that a little bit. And I know mindset wasn't the topic, but I'm bringing it in because that to me, that's what differentiates a lot of the time success and failure.
Absolutely.
And again, the female male difference. Do you find that your clients do rely on you for that, I guess, kind of that mental push to get them to stay on track? And how do you deal with that when, the client, I guess, if they coming with reasons why they can't do something or they're just really struggling with that confidence? Yeah. How do you deal?
Yeah. I mean, at times, I think everyone goes through that to some degree, obviously varying degrees. Some people struggle more than others. I've had a lot of athletes who don't require any metaphorical kick up the arse. I've got some clients who are just completely bought in from the get-go and all the way to the end. I think some people don't realize how much having an extremely low body fat percentage actually affects you, like in every capacity. So some people start behaving in ways that they thought they never would. Like they're all of a sudden lacking motivation to the nth degree. And sometimes that's just a conversation you have to have with people. Say, hey, I know it's hard right now, but it's not going to be like this forever. And that's why we don't walk around shredded all the time. Just try and teach them the importance of just getting in and getting out. It's not going to last forever. This is why diets don't last forever. So
what happens to people when, do they get really cranky? Have you got any really funny stories on that?
Oh, I'd have to sit there and think for a while about any funny stories, but yeah, people do change. And I think the biggest problem with it is they don't realize they do. When they're being grumpy or hangry or, lacking energy and just being moody all the time, they don't realize they're actually doing it. So then what about you, Christine?
Well, apparently about a month before a couple of comments, I didn't talk.
Right.
I didn't realize that because in my head I was having a lot of conversations.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's funny you mentioned that because I was the same when I dieted for my last show. My partner at the time, she often used to joke about like, oh yeah, I didn't have a boyfriend for 2 months. And I think back now, I'm like, damn, I like really did not talk much. Yeah, just exhausted, and your body, like without realizing you're in energy conservation mode. So you're trying to save every little bit of energy you have, and talking is one of those things.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you're not aware of it because, as I said, there's a lot of conversations going on in your head. And I know, like, for me, the last 2 weeks was so radically different to the diet. Like, I would say set and forget like you said, you got to tweak it along the way. But those last 2 weeks is when you really start to manipulate and change things. And I'd be like running through where I was at, what I would need to do, what type of carb I would need to do this time, what I have to deplete. Do I have to deplete fully? Think about my last show, the success of that, the timing of that. So that was taking a lot of my time from, probably that 8 to 6 weeks out.
Yeah.
And so that was very busy, but yes, it wasn't being vocalized. I wasn't bouncing off ideas and things like that. And like say you'd come home from training, do your second cardio session, then it'd just be like lights out.
Yeah, that's it. Like I said, the scary thing is like people don't realize they're like that. So sometimes you have to pull them aside and be like, wait, like, get your shit together. Like, you've still got to be an adult.
Just switching the conversation up, you've done a little bit of judging on natural federations in India, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was very interesting. Specifically just mainly because of the people that we judge. So Indians, genetically, they're typically very small people. So they have quite small joints. So just a little bit of muscle on them makes them look unbelievable. So I remember in one division, I think it was the men's physique overall, and like they were incredible. Like I didn't expect them to be as good as they were. I got to give them credit. And I was like, damn, these dudes are like quite jacked. Anyway, we finished up the judging and that was the intermission for the show. And I went backstage to have a chat with some of them, congratulate them. And they were like up to my shoulder. And I'm an average height guy and these guys are tiny, but on stage, they just looked unbelievably huge. That was really interesting, but judging is something that I get a lot of joy out of. Like it's very interesting.
Are you getting asked to do a lot of judging these days?
Yeah, there's a federation that I do judge for almost every season.
That's cool.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, in India, obviously because international protein's strong over there, like we've been coming up 2.5 years now and just growing and growing. So the Indian and their love of bodybuilding
it's crazy.
It is. And I don't know if you got to travel around too much there, but it's almost like every second little shanty shack thing is like got a big muscle body painted on it and it's a gym.
Yeah. And it doesn't look like a gym from the outside.
But it's a gym and they have it's almost like a cultural thing where bigger people do have a better status.
Yeah.
We were at the expo there and the guys who are like, because as you said, a lot of them are physically quite small and the ones who are big, they had like an entourage, like dude walking around and he's got like, 50 people following him because they just want to be around the big person.
Yeah.
And we took our strongman Rongo over there and they just went nuts because he's picking up like 2 Indians at a time and throwing them around and they were just like, me, I want to be next and stuff. But just their passion for it was just crazy. So I'm going to ask you, how many competitors did they have at that show?
Wow. Had more than I thought they would. Individual competitors, maybe 120.
Okay, because I've heard they've had like 600 or 1,200 people at a show just because it's such a huge population and stuff. It's just.
Didn't you tell me that they consume the most whey protein out of all countries?
Maybe Troy told you that.
Okay,
I don't know if I told you that, but I mean, with the population that they have,
makes sense.
It would make sense because we sell like Superior Whey. Is number one. We've actually the gourmet WPI is going off over there because it's sweetener free, but the Superior Whey they just love that product and Warhammer.
Right. Yeah. I don't know the exact numbers, but for a very first ICN show and for where it was, like it was a lot more than I thought it would be. But the amount of people that were at the show, oh my God, and the crowd was like going wild. Like they were really, really passionately into it. It was great. Like I had a lot of fun over there.
Cool.
And they're great people too.
That's right. They are so, but they're so interested as well. Like,
they're hungry for knowledge. Like we even did like a registration day the day before and there was 3 of us judges and we had to be there just to, communicate with the competitors and have a chat with them. And they just had so many questions. It was great.
So let's talk a little bit more about judging because back in the day, or not so long, I've judged on and off through over the years. What do you find the hardest about judging?
When there's a really close decision, but the 2 physiques are different. That is really close because you got one guy who is like, let's say we've got bodybuilding, right? You got one guy who is massive and just maybe lacking that last bit of condition. But then you got a guy who's really, really small, lacks a bit of shape, but is just shredded to the bone. And it's like, which way do we want to go? What do you sort of want your federation to be known for, like mass or condition? So I think that's the hardest bit is having to make a decision where it's never right, but it's never wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's why bodybuilding is a subjective sport. And I know that a lot of
judges like certain things.
Yeah. And I know back when I was judging, Victoria was known for liking the shredded look, and in New South Wales, judges were known for liking the bigger look. Generally, every time would go that way. So you knew that the bigger, smoother guy was going to win in Sydney, and then the shredded guy was going to win in Victoria. Queensland, I'm not quite sure. I think we're a little bit more across the board there, but yeah, it is that thing, and that's what I always found like really, really tough. And I'd be like, please let there be something in their posing routine that can let me
that you can pick out. Yeah. I always find like, okay, you got to look at that bigger dude and say, is he like that big to the point where it justifies him being soft?
Yeah, like if he was shredded like that guy, would he still be
exactly?
Would he be bigger than that guy?
Exactly. Yeah. Like he's got to be pretty big and pretty well shaped. Like he's got to tick a lot of other boxes if we can let him get through on that condition. Yeah.
I'm assuming in the judging position you get a lot of criticism.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough not to really cop much at all, but I know like in bigger shows and bigger federations where, you know, there's more at stake. Yeah, some of the judges get a lot of flack.
So you need some pretty thick skin. Have you ever had any flack?
I would get asked questions, and I'd always be
a lot of questions.
Very blunt about my answers, and then I didn't get much questions after that.
Yeah.
So
we always give competitors feedback, and if they come up and say, "Oh, why didn't I win?" I give it to them straight. I'm like, "Well, the other person was better." And I could give you 10 reasons why.
Exactly. And I think that's what people appreciate, even if at the time it's maybe not what they want to hear. But if you have a valid reason and an area where they can improve, then I think they take that on. And obviously that's constructive criticism.
Yeah.
But if you kind of were fluffing around like, oh, I don't know, like, I'm not quite sure why, then it sounds very dubious.
Well, if you say it right, you're helping them in their journey. And as long as they come to you with a reasonable approach, then it's a good thing, right?
Yeah, well, that's what it's about too. It's about having better competitors on stage next time.
Yeah,
you know, and them improving as a competitor.
Yeah, and it's important to let the competitors know if it was a close decision. Say, yeah, it was very close, and just because you didn't win, it doesn't mean you weren't incredible. That person was just that little bit better. And I think sometimes people struggle with that is when they don't win, they feel like they've failed or they feel like they look crap, and it's like, no, you actually look really good. And someone who looked like a veteran pro showed up. Like that's unlucky. And that's the thing, because you are competing against who's there on the day. You know, you might have been shoo-in if that person hadn't turned up, but that's how bodybuilding goes every time. Exactly. It's just all about what shows up. And like I said, with the big and the small guy, like you don't know what's going to show up.
Yeah. And that's the thing again, where a lot of the time with the judging panel, it's why they have an uneven number.
Yep.
So that it tries to eliminate. Yeah, because you might have that, because subjectively you and I may have a different opinion. I may rate size a little bit over condition, and then so you have to assume that like 4 people went one way, 3 people went the other, and that's the thing. It is that close, but it's a very Aussie thing, I think, where coming second is the end of the world, whereas
that we don't celebrate it anymore.
Whereas it
counts as a loss.
Exactly. You guys come second in the rugby all the time. What are you talking about?
I don't follow. What's rugby?
I think you're 4th or.
Yeah, I don't follow
Who's
rugby.
Who's number one? Just throwing it out there.
I don't know. What's rugby? What on earth is that?
Is New Zealand still the best?
Of course they are. They always have been consistently.
Yeah,
forever.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's because that's all they do over there, isn't it?
Something like that.
Yeah.
There's, of course, the sheep as well, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, we'll leave that one out.
Throwing Ash always has to bring it down a level.
So, Joey, let's give you a little bit of a plug here. If obviously you're good at what you do, if people want to get in contact with you or if they want to start prepping for a comp, what are the steps they need to take?
Just send me an email.
Okay, what's your email?
joeycantlinpt@gmail.com. If you want to view some of my work or the clients I've worked with, you can check me out on Instagram at Joey Cantlin PT. I don't have a website. I've never had a website.
You probably don't need it.
I've never needed it. I know lots of people who do have websites who doesn't really help their business anyway. It looks cool to have one. Yeah. Maybe I will get one day, but I just use Instagram.
Cool. Perfect. And is there any sort of pre-work they can be doing in the meantime before they come to you? Is there the ideal, if they could come to you on the ideal sort of platform, what would it be?
Start practicing what you're going to need in prep. So start practicing tracking your food. Start actually putting in the work towards building your physique. So don't come to me and you've had 4 weeks off training, or you've only been training for, 3 months. Like, you need to have been training for a substantially longer period of time to even consider going into a show. And I get everyone's got to start somewhere, but there is no point going into a 24, 30 week prep when you don't have any muscle or any shape, because by the time you cut down, you're just going to look skinny.
Yeah. So are there reasons why you turn people away? And if there are, what are they?
Well, the first reason will be because I'm just too busy at that time.
Yep.
I've always been big on trying to help as many people as I can, but it obviously gets to a point where you don't want to affect your quality of service as a coach. You've still got a lot of people who are paying you for a good service, so you do have to put that first. Although it's tempting to try and get as much business as you can, you've got to sometimes turn it away.
Yep.
And some people just aren't ready to undertake something like that yet. Like, they might have some behavior traits that just don't align with getting ready for a show. They might not have good behaviors around eating. I find that's a pretty common one, is people come to me and they're using bodybuilding or bikini shows or fitness shows as a way to fix their eating disorder or to further fuel it without realizing it. So if you can see that behavior, you say, hey, I can work with you, but we need to do these things before we start a contest prep or consider competing.
Okay. Hey, this has been really interesting. Christine, do you have anything else you want to throw in there?
It was a little bit around the, how long before someone should compete, because obviously that kind of came up, and we talked about if someone's only got a little bit of training under their belt, what is the average amount of training that someone would have? And I know it's different for everybody, but what would be is it like 2 years of training or 1 year of training before you would say, okay, you're going to have enough muscle to step on stage?
Yeah.
What's the average?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it differs between people. Some people have incredible genetics and they look at a dumbbell and they grow muscle. Some people might need 3 to 5 years of actual solid training before they look like they belong on a stage. Some people might need 6 months. I would say average is like maybe 18 months you want to have at least been training for. But then you've got the nutrition component. Like, you should be relatively well educated around nutrition. And that's why I try and get people in their off seasons before they even consider starting prep.
Yeah. Now that's I think that's what the point that I wanted to make, because I know a lot of people do. They kind of get so excited because they see people on Instagram that are competing, walk in the gym, 2 weeks later they're wanting to do a comp. Yeah. And that's probably the first thing that's going to kill their enthusiasm for training because it is still hard work. I don't want to put people off, but
it's very hard.
We don't want to undersell the work and the commitment that it does take. So yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but no, thank you.
No, thank you for having me.
No
Brilliant. Much appreciated.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Words of wisdom. If you like what you've heard, recognize that these tips, they're free. So show your support by becoming a loyal international protein customer by jumping online, hunt our product down, and hit that buy now button. So once again, like, share, and subscribe to our podcast so we can continue to bring you these episodes from our one and only Aussie Muscle Guru, 3 times world champion, Christine Enville.